We've all seen it happen, right? Online drama that just explodes out of nowhere. But what if a single private comment could spark a public meltdown that actually says something, well, something pretty deep about our entire creative culture? Today, we're going to break down an argument that uses the case of a creator named Isaac Brown to do exactly that.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? What happens when something that should have been a private conversation gets dragged out into the public square for everyone to see? Let's dive into how one creator's reaction to a little bit of feedback became a perfect case study for the digital age.
So, where did this whole firestorm even start? You might be surprised. According to the source material, this entire thing was kicked off by just a single piece of private criticism sent directly to the creator. That's it.
Okay, so how in the world does one private comment turn into a massive public spectacle? This first section is all about breaking down that exact transformation. The source argues that Isaac Brown didn't just, reply. He followed a very specific script. Look at this four-step process. First up, he gets the private criticism. Then, instead of just messaging back, he activates the cameras. Next, he takes this personal thing and frames it as some big public grievance. And finally, the last step, he broadcasts it to his entire audience. It's presented as a total performance.
And this quote from the source text it really nails the author's whole point. He could have answered privately or simply ignored the matter like a man secure in his craft. Instead, Isaac Brown chose the theatrical path. The key word there is chose. The author is hammering home that this wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate choice.
So this idea of a theatrical path, it leads us right into the author's bigger, more critical point here. This whole cultural obsession with performance over actual substance. Where the story you tell becomes way more important than what's actually true.
So what's the evidence that this was all just a performance? Well, the source points to one big thing. The story kept changing. The video titles were edited. The focus of the whole argument kept shifting around. For the author, this was a huge red flag. It wasn't about sticking to the facts, it was about tweaking the performance to get the best reaction from the crowd.
And really, you can boil this whole thing down to a clash between two totally different ideals. On one side, you've got truth. That's all about being secure in your craft, having a private dialogue, actually reflecting on things. And on the other side, performance, which is all about public spectacle, a shifting narrative, and just taking offense.
But here's the thing. This isn't just about one creator's reaction. The source uses this whole incident as a way to talk about a much bigger problem. This growing confusion between having the latest, greatest tools and having real, actual, hard-earned skill.
The author actually has a name for this whole phenomenon: digital convenience culture. It's this idea that just because you have access to all the easy tools, the plugins, the presets, the loops, that somehow that's the same thing as genuine mastery. It's this belief that convenience can just replace the hard work and discipline of real craft. And this slide just lays out that contrast perfectly. Over on the left, you've got past craft, which the source defines by things like immense discipline and real invention. And on the right, present convenience, which is described as more of a casual, copy-and-paste kind of approach, just assembling bits and pieces that other people made.
So where's all of this headed? Well, this brings us to the author's final warning. And it's not just about creative tools anymore. It's about personal character and the real danger of what the source calls digital fragility.
The author uses this incredibly powerful metaphor to get the point across. A life built upon paper-thin skin is an unstable construction. Just think about that for a second. The idea is that if you can't handle even the smallest criticism, then the entire foundation you're building your career, or even your life on, is fundamentally unstable. And the source kind of maps out how this plays out over time. Look, platforms come and go, right? Technology changes in a flash. Audiences, they get bored. They move on. So when all that digital applause finally fades away, what are you actually left with? Well, the author says it's your habits. True, disciplined craft is the only thing that's actually built to last.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What's the final piece of advice from the source? It's pretty simple, actually. Choose character over software. It's this call to focus on building your internal strength, not just collecting more external tools.
And we're going to leave you with this final, really provocative thought from the source material. It argues that at the end of the day, time is the one critic you can't silence, you can't edit, you can't ignore. So the question it leaves us all to think about is, what will actually endure?